What brings the worst out in people? Black Friday. Ah yes, the only day of the year you can see a Karen curb stomp a kid over a PlayStation 5. I spent 10 years in retail. I absolutely refuse to step out my front door on Black Friday for anything short of a medical emergency. We have leftovers and running water, so we can survive 24 hours. This is me, but just 5 years in retail. That stain on my soul isn't ever coming out. Travel. To know what a person is really like, go traveling with them. I lost one of my greatest friends of many years due to my birthday trip to Puerto Rico, just the two of us. I don't know what it was that caused the shift, but I literally didn't recognize her after the trip. It was awful. The worst part was I was her maid of honor in her wedding a month or so later. I tried to have a talk with her that maybe I should back out, and we had what I thought was a great talk and apology. Found out she was only nice to me after the trip to make sure I didn't back out, barely acknowledged me day of. She canceled my speech and gave it to another bridesmaid, and we never spoke again after the wedding. Like, why would you want me in your wedding photos for the rest of your life? Like, what happened that it went downhill that fast? How long had y'all been friends? Can't imagine losing a lifelong friend over a disagreement between restaurants, etc. Not original poster. I had a friend of 15 years and I go on a trip together. She ended up abandoning me, screaming at and belittling me, prude-shamed me, peer pressuring me, being racist towards me, telling me I don't walk right, turned the other travelers on me because I'm the quiet one and she's the loud, boisterous one who is fun to party with but not kind of have around, etc. She came to the hotel room at 3 a.m. when I was asleep, extremely loud, drunk and high, but then subsequently screamed at me to pipe the F down for whispering, asking her where the light switch to the bathroom is. And when I tried to stand up for myself, she told me to watch my damn attitude. I sobbed hard. Oh, and she tried to start fights with random people on the street. It's entirely possible for a long friendship to be destroyed. Social battery burnout can make people short-circuit. If I'm in someone else's company for more than 48 hours without break, I essentially turn into the opposite of myself. I get quiet, I zone out and stare off, my voice goes a bit lower and I say shorter sentences. It's unintentional, but it absolutely can happen to most people. Edit. I don't think that's the scientific term, that's just what I call it. I've had to travel for work a few times, and once, I took a flight with a coworker I'd always thought of as fairly mild-mannered, quiet, and laid back. Prior to boarding, the flight attendants were asking if anyone was willing to check their carry-on, because there wasn't going to be enough space in the overhead bins, and I made the huge mistake of offhandedly telling this coworker that I used to always check my carry-on when they asked, because it's pretty convenient, until once, they lost my carry-on and it took like a week to get it back. Then I stopped doing it because it wasn't worth the risk. Unfortunately, we were some of the last people to board, due to our boarding zone, and when we got on the plane, the flight attendant announced that we would have to check our bags because there just wasn't room for them. I was like, oh well, c'est la vie. Well, wouldn't you know it, my mild-mannered laid-back coworker threw the biggest fit. He was nasty and condescending and insisted that they had to put our bags in the overhead bin somehow. I tried to tell him that there was nothing we could do, but he was fuming, ranting about how ridiculous this was. I was dying of embarrassment. Eventually he gave in, mostly because there was nothing they could do, and I apologized to the flight attendant when his back was turned, saying I'm so sorry. He's not normally like this. She just smiled at me wearily and said, travel brings out the worst in people. Traveling with people who don't want to take charge and make plans but also don't want any of the options you provide. Sometimes travel best out the best in people too. I wouldn't say it's always the worst. Inheritances. I've seen both my family and friends' families absolutely ripped apart after someone dies and another family member doesn't feel they've received their share, or that the will was unfair, or that property mysteriously goes missing before the estate is settled. Awful, awful stuff. I think the worst is my friend's dad and his sister haven't spoken for over 30 years due to a squabble over their mother's will. 30 years. The kicker is that they're both quite well off on their own. Friend's dad is a very, very successful trial lawyer and friend's aunt married a successful doctor. This wasn't money either of them ever actually needed, but they've not had a relationship for decades because of it. My grandmother isn't even dead and people are already deciding how they'll split the inheritance like there won't be a will. She's got hundreds of thousands and I've been consistently telling her to spend it all on herself. The lady never had a brand new car in all her life. She's 90 and got her license before she hit 20, she bought a nice Honda CR-V recently and a house for her and her daughter, cash. I'm honestly worried about what's going to happen to my dad if he dies. Like my aunts, which I absolutely despise, already act as if he owes them money, car rides, places to party, etc. simply cause he has a little bit more money than they do. These are the people who constantly throw him in the dirt and call him a retard, and I absolutely think they will harass me for money when he dies, yet he refuses to create a will. They've done that same crap with my grandma, but she's had a will for years and years. I don't know where you live, so it might be different than Canada, but in absence of a will, it goes by default to the spouse, then kids, then parents, siblings, grandparents, uncles/aunts, cousins, and after that I don't know. My wife is in healthcare and says you can often tell when someone in serious condition has a lot of money because the extended family all show up, but the vibe isn't sad so much as expectant. She was recovering one patient from an unexpected surgery, elderly, coming out of sedation, covered in tubes, oxygen, etc., and the family arrived and told my wife they decided to pull the plug, and she had to explain that their family member was not dying, not on life support, and would probably recover just fine, which seemed to elicit some consternation instead of relief. Kind of seems like an inheritance was on the table. We can also tell when someone is getting disability checks. No one comes to visit, ever, and things start going south for the patient, so we call to say, hey, things are getting bad, there's still a full code, are you sure you want to put 98-year-old grandma who's been in a coma for the past 6 months through all of this? Yep. She's a fighter. Keep her alive as long as possible. I live 2 miles from the hospital, but I'll never come visit, I'll just occasionally call to check up at 2 a.m. when the bar's close. Bye. My aunt pulled some dirty crap on my grandmother right before she died and somehow got her to sign over all of the over $100,000 inheritance solely to my aunt. This never would have happened without some form of serious emotional manipulation/blackmail, because my aunt is an addict and my grandmother refused to enable her monetarily while she was living. My mom died not even 2 years later, so I really could have used that inheritance. She and her husband got away doing the same exact thing to her brother-in-law when her father-in-law passed, and since none of us had the money to fight her, none of us could. The law didn't care. We obviously don't speak to that part of the family anymore. It sounds like my dad's sister. My aunt was another addict that robbed her mother blind and took so much money from her, even before she died. She got a majority of the inheritance and was too high to even show up to her own mom's funeral. She would eventually odd and die a couple years later, and there was no sympathy for her. My grandmother died following a surgery for a perforated ulcer and had been on a ventilator, and she was frantically trying to tell my parents something when they visited her, but she was vented and on propofol, so she couldn't speak and was too loopy to write. It was only after she passed and we found out she was forced to change her will that we realized she was probably trying to tell them about that. The really insulting part is my aunt is completely mentally deficient and invested all of that money into a pyramid scheme. She stole all of that money just so she could go into debt with it when I was planning on using my share to help fund my education. It's been years and I'm still so angry. I do agree with you that inheritance can cause that type of thing. In your friend's aunt and dad's case, it sounds like the inheritance was more of a tipping point than the outright reason they stopped communicating. I just can't help but assume that they had a lot of beef to begin with, and the inheritance was the straw that broke the camel's back. Traffic. I live on a major 4-lane road going into the city, and the number of times I hear people screaming at each other over the smallest traffic infractions is honestly frightening. That, and all the car horns, which I jokingly refer to as the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra's horn section. A person who is cut off while driving, F you. That same person who is cut off while walking, oops. Sorry. After you. It's really hard to kill someone by walking into them. It's really easy to kill someone by driving into them. I think the stakes and the stress that comes with them are what makes the difference here. Really good point. I agree. Besides killing someone, bumping into someone on the sidewalk won't cost $1,000s of dollars. Bumping into someone's car just might cost you. Or kill them. You don't walk around carrying your collection of Fabergé eggs everywhere you go. Some good answers here, To which I'll add, giving things away for free. I've had the surreal experience of working at a Long Island tennis tournament attended by generally very wealthy people. They arrived in top-end luxury cars or limos, wearing designer clothes, and watches worth more than my car. I was tasked with opening a case of some sort of little branded tchotchke, like cheap pens, keychains, etc., and handing them out to the attendees as they walked the sponsor areas. People went berserk, shoving each other, lunging across the table, thank cripes there was a table, to grab stuff from my hand, missing key tennis matches to lurk by our tent, awaiting the next crap dispersal. Wow. I've seen this type of thing happen many other times too, with people going to great lengths just to get some pittance of which they have no need. Edit. Wow. Lots of you have seen this phenomenon in action. Thanks for the discussion. To clarify, I picked on the rich Long Islanders, and many pointed out that the rich are that way because they go after free stuff. But it happens anywhere the giveaways happen. Poor, average, and rich alike behave like this. And yeah, I can't overlook an opportunity to use tchotchke in conversation. There was a line in Crazy Rich Asians, "No one loves free stuff more than rich people." I was floored how in the book all these extremely wealthy women who flew to Paris on a private jet that had a state-of-the-art yoga studio inside of it, wanted to take all of the hotel freebies, bottled water and cook ramen in their hotel room. Laughing out loud. Or when Astrid was bidding for those scrolls but whipped out a stack of coupons at the grocery store. Laughing out loud. I was giving away a working fridge, and after dealing with 5 buttholes, I decided to just throw crap away rather than try be nice. What a effing waste of time that was. I leave stuff out by the road with a sign on it so I don't have to deal with anyone. Yeah, that's great until they decide everything in your yard is free. I put a free TV out front and 10 minutes later I see someone browsing the potted plant sitting in front of my house. Oh, there was a free sign. Yeah, you stupid bitch, a free sign on the TV 30 yards away. I got a little hot under the collar with that one. People are effing trash. I used to post whenever I'd leave crap on the curb for people to take. And I'd also get a lot of "can you deliver too?" I always say, if I have to drive anywhere to get this stuff off my property, it's going to the dump. The reason it's on the curb right now is because I'm lazy. Good luck. And I'd also get a lot of "can you deliver too?" Yeah, I've gotten that when posting free stuff on Craigslist. WTF, man? F people. Divorce proceedings. Especially with kids involved. It can turn a couple of average people into monsters. Marriage Story captures this extremely well. By the end of it, I just hated lawyers. And it isn't even an exaggeration of what really happens. I have a coworker who is a great, fun, respectful person who told me her divorce proceedings went very similarly to what happened in the film. They both agreed to go on with the divorce without getting lawyers involved, but then started getting frustrated with each other, and it eventually evolved into bickering from both sides. This, in turn, led to them getting anxiety from talking to each other and getting lawyers, which led to more animosity. It has been 4 years and they're only now starting to get on better terms than they were when the divorce was finalized. Listen, if we start from a place of reasonable and they start from a place of crazy, when we settle, we will be somewhere between reasonable and crazy. Unfortunately, this became more relatable than I would have imagined. I always like the HALT rule. If you're feeling hungry, angry, late or tired, then it's likely things you say or do will come off worse than you intend. Edit. Lots of replies about the L being lonely. That works too. Turns out learning acronyms differently brings out the worst in some people too. One of my favorite quotes that is related to this. If you think everyone hates you, you probably need to sleep. If you think you hate everyone, you probably need to eat. I feel like this is how I got fat. I've never heard this before, but I like it. Thank you. I thought the L was for lonely. Both work. Weddings. My father is a minister. He says he would rather help with a funeral over a wedding any day. Weddings leave people with a sense of extreme desperation to achieve perfection. The worst is when the expectation for perfection is from the mother of the bride and not the engaged couple. Nothing worse than two kids trying to have a nice day and Momzilla just effing decimates it because she can't stand not being the center of attention for one moment. As someone in the wedding industry, this right effing here. As a hotel waiter who's served too many weddings, what's your secret to not dying of an aneurysm? I'm on the effing brink. This was going to be my answer. I have watched two people that I knew to be kind and rational become absolutely horrible people when they were planning their weddings. Ungrateful, rude, pushy, demanding, crazy, and overall just awful to be around. It's like they became possessed. I was a wedding photographer back in the 90s, and I totally agree. And it almost always is the moms ruining the day. After almost a decade of seeing how insane and crazy those all went, my own wedding years later was held at 7:50 a.m. in the morning with only 5 guests for a whopping $800 total, limo included. Absolutely the most fun we've ever had, smiley face. When you were told to wait 20 minutes and it's now been 21 minutes and you are still waiting. If I ever have to give a wait time, I usually overestimate the time. They will be happy if it takes less time but pissed if it's 1 minute more than what was quoted. I worked in customer service jobs for years and would also do this. We were trained to underpromise then overdeliver. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.